you ever had one of those eureka moments? When something so daunting and so complex just all of a sudden starts to make absolute sense? It's like the light bulb goes on in your mind and you can see so clearly precisely what you need to do next. Well, that's exactly what I had last year as I was becoming the chairman for TIPROS, one of the largest young professional organizations in our country. You see, for years, my friends and I would come to the table, have serious conversations with local politicians, and talk about issues and policy concerns that affected young people in our state. And sure, they'd give us the time of day, but all we ever really got was good lip service. It was kind of like getting a pat on the head and a, "Oh, that's so cute, but you just don't know how this works." And so as the result of years of frustration, I began to realize that despite what many of those in power would have you believe, it doesn't take that many people to affect the landscape of your political environment. As a matter of fact, in a city like Tulsa, my hometown, it only takes about 2,000 to 3,000 like-minded individuals, new voters, to be the deciding factor in every major local election. Just give you a frame of reference, that's like 1 in 10 students at TCC alone, the community college that I'm talking in today. It's not a high threshold. And so with this basic realization as the impetus, we decided to put together a young voter engagement campaign, something that spoke specifically to the 40 and under voter, something that talked to them directly, that engaged them and got them excited to show up and be part of this process. And when we did so, we were able to increase the young voter turnout in our hometown by 50%. 3 separate times we did this in local critical elections. And what we were able to prove is that by focusing on local outcomes and doing targeted outreach to young people, you could find the keys to success, to reinvigorating most millennial civic activism. The strategy that we developed relied on 4 simple processes. We wanted to make sure that it was replicable, that it was easy to do, that you could take it to your community and you could be the change maker there too. What we found is that getting people to show up and participate, it's really a pretty logical process. The 4 steps we developed were this. First, show that there's a low threshold for impact. People want to know when they give you their time and their energy that they can affect change. So show them that they can make a difference. Second, relate it to something that they care about. Talk about the issues that matter to them. Make sure they know that a change that they're making has an impact on their daily lives. Third, lower the barriers to participate. You've got to make it easy to do. Do not give them any excuse not to show up. And fourth, it may seem pretty basic, but you got to make it fun. We took full advantage of this thing they call FOMO. It's the fear of missing out. And we knew if we were going to have this big rallying march, if we were going to talk about these passionate points, this revolutionary impact that we could have by taking our state back, by taking our city back, and taking ownership of our community, people would want to participate. They'd want to be part of this process. And we were going to make it fun to do and make sure that they were part of it. Now, early on, we realized that we had some big hurdles to overcome. I mean, young people just don't show up. That's the status quo, about 10% of them. And we continued to hear over and over again from our friends and our family, from our peers, basic sentiments that were disenfranchising. Things like, well, I don't vote because it doesn't really matter. You know, I'm not going to have any impact on this election, so I just don't even bother. And that one hurt. It hurt because it kind of made sense. I mean, having grown up in an era of over-the-top gerrymandering, of a Citizens United Supreme Court decision, of hanging chads and electoral college versus popular vote slanted elections, and now we've got alleged Russian governmental tampering as well, well, it starts to become really easy to understand why people of my generation could come to the table with such a preconceived notion. What we knew is that we couldn't continue to have a conversation about national politics, and that's all everybody was really thinking about. We had to change the conversation instead to local politics. Make sure they knew how few of them it would actually take to make an impact. So that was the first step, making sure we were talking local. The second big hurdle that we had to overcome was another sentiment we continued to hear over and over again. And it was basically this. It was, I don't vote because I don't even really know what's on my ballot. I don't know what politician X or politician Y cares about or why it matters to me, so why am I going to bother to show up? I'm just wasting my vote. And in an era where information is quite literally more accessible than ever before, I understand how this could seem contradictory. But when you start to think about it, and you realize that local politicians hire political consultants whose main job is to get the biggest bang for the buck, then of course they're not talking to the 10%. Of course they aren't talking to the issues that they care about. No, they're focused on the people that are showing up and that are regular. That's their job and that's what they do. We knew this, and we realized that young people were not being communicated to. It was not a conversation about the topics that mattered to them, and we had to change that. We had to develop a communication strategy that talked to issues that mattered to us. We had to do it in ways that we were inherently paying attention to. We couldn't go and just buy TV ads or do direct mail and expect that it was going to hit our demographic. It wasn't. We couldn't talk about things like security forces and constitutional preservation and expect people to pay attention. They weren't. No, we had to talk about things like criminal justice reform, things like quality of life investments in our community, stuff we were going to inherit. We had to talk about alcohol law modernization because we knew people were going to get excited about it. And we had to do it in ways that mattered, ways that would resonate. We had to go online, buy advertising where they were already at. We had to create viral videos and promote it on social media. And when we did that, hundreds of thousands of people watched. It was impressive. We knew we had lit a fire that went viral when it was stoked. So now you figure, you've got everybody excited, the impact they can make on the local level, they're pumped. They're going to go there. They're going to do it. But no, we're talking about new voters. We're talking about people that are already disenfranchised. We couldn't wait for them to show up. We couldn't expect that they were going to go find a registration form, already know that they had to get it in 3 weeks before a voting deadline, and still be part of the process. It wasn't going to happen. So what we decided to do was instead take the message to them again. We went out and set up at high schools and universities. We threw big blowout registration parties. We took our message, our rallying cry, to captive audiences. We were out at music festivals, farmers markets, art crawls, anywhere we could expect to see young people. We were there telling them why their vote mattered and bringing a registration form to them so that we could turn it in and make it easy. We had to make it easy. We couldn't give them an excuse to not show up on election day. It was too important. When we did that, the results were frankly astounding. We had registered thousands of new young voters over a few months. We had created the mass of people that we needed to take ownership of the elections that mattered. We had everybody registered, excited about their issues. We knew that they were engaged on the local front, but you still got to get them to show up on election day. That was probably the most critical hurdle to overcome. I mean, young people today are burdened with so much to do. It's hard enough to go and drop your kid off at school, get to work, make sure your boss is happy that you're meeting your quota, come back, get your kid home from school, make sure that they're fed. Nevertheless, remember that it's election day and you got to go vote. We weren't going to wait for that. We wanted to take advantage of the early voting process. We knew that if we set up across the street from the county election board, if we took care of things like pizza and tacos, if we had great music and a big party, and we made it easy to get there by giving them free Uber rides, that we could count on them to go across the street and take care of the rest of it. So that's exactly what we did. We threw big blowout parties on the early voting days, and we doubled the turnout in early voting in our community last year. It was insane. We were talking to a captive audience, bringing them a message, and making it easy for them to participate. It's a really simple strategy, what we put together. It really didn't take that many people to make it happen, and it didn't cost a whole lot. It was something that is replicable, and the reason I'm telling you this today is because it was a simple playbook that is scalable. If you're sitting and you're watching this in Stillwater or Norman, in Austin or Kansas City, or in this crowd and you've got an idea, take this simple strategy and replicate it. Be the change maker in your community too, and when you turn it over, you'll see what possibility there is. Thank you.